What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to offer some very enthusiastic praise for Godzilla Minus One. And I should admit, when I went into this flick, I was exhausted. I was like lying in my chair ahead of it. I'm like, how am I ever going to make it through a movie? And I was like rubbing my eye and trying to get some moisture going. And I thought I was going to come home, go to sleep, review it in the morning. But around the 90-minute mark, and it's overall, I think, 2-hour running time, suddenly I just felt this surge of adrenaline. I was like, I don't care how much coffee I have to pump into my system. We're talking about this movie tonight because the ending is that satisfying, and it's hard to know what I should share without giving away spoilers. Let's go totally spoiler-free initially. But for $15 million, this movie delivers a serious punch. And I think it's going to be a lesson for those people who squander $250 million on these utterly disposable, generic, interchangeable, just lame fucking blockbusters. And I think this whole trend of trying to make blockbuster movies that appeal to everyone has got to come to an end because the movies just aren't memorable. They're not resonating, not clicking, and more of them seem to fail than those that don't. But with this movie, it almost seems like the filmmaker said to themselves, let's just make a Godzilla movie for the most diehard Godzilla fans imaginable. Or at least that is my presumption. I am not a diehard Godzilla fan. I've seen the original 1954 film twice. But otherwise, I'm pretty much a giant Godzilla poser. From 1985 onward, I've seen every single Godzilla movie that's come out because I just watch them in real time as they come out. But I've never really gone back and done the deep dive on all the spin-offs and sequels from the 50s and 60s, even the really weird ones where Godzilla has a little baby and that sort of thing. And of course, I've seen all the clips posted online, Godzilla and King Kong fighting when they're shoving trees in each other's mouths and that sort of thing. But I'm not a devotee, or anyway, I'm not a connoisseur of Godzilla at all. But this movie is balls to the wall. It's intense. It's entertaining. But I knew in advance, or at least I'd heard in advance, that it was going to deliver a disproportionate impact relative to its pretty small budget. And those rumors were absolutely true. It's got 4 major action sequences, and each one gets better than the one before. And then the first one's pretty goddamn good. I was like, whoa, that was fucking awesome. And then the next one's like, well, that one was even better, and they just keep escalating. But what I did not expect from this movie at all and got in abundance was genuine, sincere, heartfelt emotion where I was almost moved to tears, as ridiculous as that sounds, toward the end of the movie as some of the key characters started having their big hero beats, because you've got tugboat captains and you've got scientists and you've got former kamikaze pilots. You got all these different characters that are all playing a role in the big climactic showdown with Godzilla. And they all get to have their moment, and as the music, the very recognizable music, if you know your Godzilla history, the music would just be like pulling up a chair next to a warm fire. But as that music started to build with thunderous intensity, I was like, I cannot believe how emotionally impactful this flick is. And with all that thunderous emotion, it was no surprise to me at all at the end of the movie when a good chunk of the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. They were whistling, they were clapping, and I was one of them. And the crowd, I'd say my theater was maybe 20% full, but I feel like the people that were there really wanted to be there. They were right on the movie's wavelength, and they were dialed in, and they absolutely got their money's worth. So I feel like if you're curious about this movie, you saw the trailer, like, whoa, interesting. A Godzilla movie finally made by people in Japan. If anything, I would say this movie delivers above and beyond my expectations going into it. And maybe that's just because I've been so conditioned by kind of lukewarm, lackluster, just kind of milquetoast versions of Godzilla that have been coming out of Hollywood in recent years. And I'm talking about the Roland Emmerich one from the late 90s. The less said about that, the better. Just the design alone tells you all you need to know about that 1998 version of Godzilla. It was atrocious. But with all the MonsterVerse movies that have been coming out recently, I see them, and I've even watched a few episodes of that new show, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, and I would say all these Hollywood efforts with Godzilla, they have their brief shining moments where they kind of resemble something that I might want to watch, but those memories fade very quickly, and Godzilla vs. Kong has some of the dumbest shit that I've seen in modern movies. And I know we were all on lockdown, and we were all thrilled just to have something to watch at home, but at a certain point when all the characters were traveling to the center of the planet, I was like, what are we even doing here? This is some of the dumbest shit that I've ever seen. And not only dumb, moronic storylines, but featuring characters that you would rather see die than say another word. And I think that's the big failing of a lot of these Hollywood MonsterVerse movies, is that the characters could not be less interesting. And it's boring stories written by boring people featuring boring characters, when all you really want to see is Godzilla kicking all kinds of ass. And like I said with this movie, Godzilla Minus One, we do get to see Godzilla kicking all kinds of ass, and his face has so much personality. I just couldn't believe how terrifying they made him and how aggressive they made him. And I was like, finally, we get to see a Godzilla movie where he's not some misunderstood, victim or whatever the case may be. Someone who's really trying to save the world. The Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One is just trying to eat people and kill people and destroy cities. And they never even tell you why. He's just a rampaging beast, and people have to rise to the occasion and defend Japan with late 40s technology. And I thought that was so cool because after seeing Godzilla vs. Kong with all the weird futuristic technology with people flying into the core of the planet, here we have people with like wooden boats and old-fashioned machine guns. Like, what can they do with their resourcefulness and their skill and their expertise? How can they possibly defend their homeland as they're still recovering from World War II? So you might be asking yourself, who is responsible for this lean and mean but very effective little blockbuster? And that would be Takashi Yamazaki. And this is the first time I'm hearing about him. Apparently he's a visual effects expert, but he also wrote and directed this movie. Let me have a quick glance at his filmography and see if there's anything else out there that jumps out at me. He started making movies in 2000. Just having a quick glance. I don't think I've seen a single one of these movies. Oh, he made a Lupin the Third movie, Lupin the Third, the First in 2019. I will definitely need to hunt that down. I love Lupin the Third. But this is my first exposure to this director. I'll be watching his movies from now on because I love seeing a director rise to the occasion where they have limited resources and manage to outcompete people who have 10 times the resources, if not more so, if not 20 times the resources. And that's what, imagination and creativity and technique and just what the magic of movies is all about. And I realize I'm wildly overselling this movie or overstating the case, but that's just because I'm so accustomed to seeing genre movies in America disappoint. And obviously, there are exceptions. Every once in a while, one comes along like, whoa, okay, there are some people in the Dream Factory who still know how to do it. But I love rooting for the little engine that could. And if I were a consultant for a big, giant corporation like Disney right now, I'd say send every single creative exec and every single producer and every single director to see this movie just so people can realize just how much can be done with a more limited scale. You don't need to make Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny for $300 million. That is absolutely absurd. Like, you could quite literally change the world with $300 million. Maybe spend less and also make it appeal in the most intense way possible to fans of Indiana Jones, and maybe the movie will be more warmly received as opposed to people projectile vomiting in all directions, which is the usual response when people see Disney movies these days. But just to give you a little more information about this flick, it was produced by Toho Studios and is technically the 37th film in the Godzilla franchise. It's actually the 33rd Godzilla movie created by Toho and the 5th film in the franchise's Reiwa era. But what's cool about this one is that because it takes place right after World War II, it feels like this perfect jumping on point or a fresh jumping on point, but it looks like I got some more Godzilla flicks to watch that I actually might get excited about. But before I go any further, I think we need to go into spoilers because I can't praise this movie or I can't give it adequate praise without divulging some specific details. So if you want to go into the movie totally cold, definitely bail out in this video now. But just know that if you like really effective, powerful, exciting genre entertainment, which makes you kind of scream and say, oh shit, or whoa, or cool, or, I was exclaiming with glee out loud, like, wow, like that is what a genre film should do. It shouldn't leave you feeling cold and complacent and kind of bored. It should be electric. It should be energizing. It should give you adrenaline. And Godzilla Minus One definitely does. But as far as spoilers go, what I loved about this movie was watching the kind of redemption arc or the redemption tale surrounding the character of Shikishima. The movie begins with him as a kamikaze pilot in the closing days of World War II. He chickens out of his mission, lands on an island, claiming that he's having some problems with his engine, when suddenly Godzilla, who's still almost kind of like a baby at this point, or a baby by Godzilla standards, rushes onto the island, wreaks havoc. And what's cool is how Godzilla at this point is fast and dynamic and lithe and agile. And I'm so used to seeing him as like a big, lumbering, stiff building that I was cool to seeing him basically acting like a giant-sized velociraptor with a lot of speed. And he's just absolutely terrifying because in this, at least in this interpretation of Godzilla, when he looks at somebody, there's so much personality in his eyes. Like, you know who he's looking at and who he's going after next. But after that encounter in surviving World War II, this pilot, Shikishima, he's got survivor's guilt because, Japan is just completely, utterly destroyed. A lot of people died in the fires that were from the B-29 bombers. Tokyo is in ruins, and a lot of people are happy to point their fingers at him, calling him a coward, saying that he didn't live up to his duty. And so he falls into a situation where he's living with a woman who's not his wife, but she survived the fires, and she's adopted a daughter who's not her daughter, but her parents died in the fires. And the three of them kind of form this little family unit. But as a way of staying alive and earning some money, this survivor guilt-ridden pilot decides to work on these boats that are trying to clean up all the mines around Japan. And it's very risky work, but he's kind of a suicidal guy. But they basically go around with these cables between boats, picking up mines, and he's still really good at using the machine gun due to his time as a pilot, and taking out the mines. And this little tugboat crew kind of forms the core of the movie. You have one kid who was too young to fight in World War II. He's kind of green and enthusiastic. Got like the mad scientist who's great at strategies and technology and that sort of thing. And you have the grizzly old captain who just made me howl every step of the way throughout the movie. And a strong contender for the best scene in this movie, as well as a strong contender for the best scene in any Godzilla movie, is when this little crew has to fight Godzilla for the first time using like 1947 technology. They're on a wooden boat with 2 mines that they picked up and a machine gun, and that's it. And they're having to fight Godzilla, and that's in the all the trailers, and it's got all that incredible footage where you can really see Godzilla's eyes as he's moving in for the kill, and they're just blasting away, trying to keep him at bay. It's just fucking awesome. It was exhilarating. I couldn't believe how good the action was, and once again, I've been conditioned to expect bland, boring, forgettable action scenes in Godzilla movies, but the Japanese, they still know how to do it. They still know how to get it right. But where all the emotion was generated in this movie is as we get toward the end and you start to see how this whole movie is being kind of, built up to be a redemption arc for Japan's culture overall, where they're going to finally value human life. Like, they're no longer going to build planes that don't have an ejector seat, and they're no longer going to build vehicles that don't have any armor, and they're no longer going to compel people to lose their lives for the sake of the country. They're going to encourage people to save lives so the country has a future. And you can see everybody getting so optimistic and hopeful and really trying to be as resourceful as humanly possible as they cook up the most complicated, like, doomed to fail plan imaginable. I mean, I was like, you're making my head spin just describing the plan. Do you really think this plan is going to work when you fight a giant, atomic breath blasting lizard? But they do it, and it's an absolute thrill watching this plan unfold. But I just felt so much exhilaration as you see the excitement and the glee in these characters as certain ingredients of the plan start to work. And what was really cool about Godzilla here is that anytime he uses his atomic breath, it's not just like a big laser. He shoots like a beam, and where it hits, it explodes like an atomic bomb with the mushroom cloud and everything. It just made him seem so dangerous and so powerful. Whereas if he sees a target on the horizon line, if he's got his juices kind of saved up, you see those spines along his back rising out, charging up, and then he just nukes things. And they just made Godzilla seem so dangerous and so lethal and so calculating. I loved it. And since we're in the spoiler section, I'll just say that the score from the original 1954 film, a score by, hang on, I've got it right in front of me, or I thought I had it right in front of me, the score by Akira Ifukube is used to devastating effect in this. When I started hearing like, da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na-da-da-da-da-da, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting the tune exactly right, but it's like this pulse-pounding music that builds and builds and builds, and I was just like, oh my God! I could not believe how effective the music was 70 years later, and how it still perfectly fits with these kinds of movies as the battle unfolded. And seeing a former kamikaze pilot decide he's basically on what we think he's on a suicide mission, where if all else fails, he's just going to fly his plane right into Godzilla's mouth and blow him up. Because in the context of this movie, Godzilla heals really quickly, and everything they try to do to him, he just keeps healing, but they figure if they take out the head, then his body will be gone for good. And what made it so satisfying is that all along throughout like the last 30 or 40 minutes of the movie, the pilot and his engineer have been kind of conspiring to give him one last chance to fulfill his duty as a kamikaze pilot, and they've loaded up the plane, and they've got this kind of secret agreement that he's finally going to follow through on what he was obliged to do. But then seeing how they've added an eject seat, and that the path to redemption is clear, and it's time to stop thinking about suicide, and it's time to start thinking about life. I just felt this surge of emotion, which I did not anticipate at all. I think a lot of people are going to walk out of this movie doing absolute cartwheels, and not that many people need to see it to make it a success because the movie's already grossed $20 million in Japan. It'll do at least that in America. I mean, I don't know how well this movie will do or what kind of desire there is for this movie when we have a Godzilla show playing on Apple TV Plus right now. And if you're enjoying Monarch, more power to you. But if you like Godzilla, I feel like you owe it to yourself to go check this out because it just feels gritty and real and authentic. I feel like authenticity is something that we so rarely see in franchise filmmaking. And finally, we have a movie that feels like the genuine article that is designed for the most hardcore Godzilla fans dating back over the last 70 years. And what makes the timing of the release of this movie seem eerily appropriate, we have yet another cool Japanese movie playing in the theater right now. We have Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron, and that's about to go wide in about a week. So name the last time there were two genre films from Japan in the theater at the same time that seemed cool. I mean, I've already seen The Boy and the Heron and posted my review. I really enjoyed The Boy and the Heron, but if you are a fan of Japanese cinema, we have a Godzilla movie and a Hayao Miyazaki animated movie all at once. So get out there and support your Japanese filmmakers because clearly they still have some really talented filmmakers over there who know how to make the kind of movies that I dearly love. But I think that's all I got to say about this flick. Hope you enjoyed this review. If so, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and let me know what you think of the movie down below. It's a limited release tonight, or kind of like advanced previews or early access, what do you want to call it, and then it goes wide on Friday, and I'll be rooting for it all the way to, I mean, it doesn't even have to do crazy numbers. I just want to see what the audience is, and so by Sunday, when all the box office numbers have been tallied, I'll be fascinated to see just how big the audience is for a Japanese Godzilla in the theater in America. So once again, let me know what you think down below, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.